Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Bitchuation Room podcast live. How are you? Thank you for being here. I see you, Andrea Armin. I did not pronounce. Amrine. Salty Cynic on YouTube, Todd Roy on YouTube, Grow Some Food on YouTube. What's going on? We got Twitch people. Yes, Star. Mike Gonzalez 2K. Sup, France. Sup. How are you all? I hope everyone's good. I hope everyone's keeping safe and masked up and washing the hands. Remember the hand washing part of all this? Yeah, me too. I forgot it a little bit. And I get bored washing my hands for that long, but it's important. Thank you all for being here. We have such a good show. Nato Green is back. Hey, he's back. He's going to tell us what he's been up to. We also have organizer Joshua Kahn Russell. So excited to have him here to talk about the American coup that may or may not be coming in November. We are 15 days, 16 days. I don't know, future people, you're probably like 10 days out from the election. Record numbers of voting. Maybe folks have been phone banking. You've been calling. I wrote some letters and then I folded them into the worst origami humanly possible to fit into small little envelopes. And look, I hope that doesn't like sway it against me. I think though, those voters in Arizona are going to be pretty mad at Frankie, which is my phone bank name. Speaking of phone banking, we take tips here at the Bitchuation Room, and we are donating a portion of those tips to Seed the Vote, which is working with grassroots organizations across the country, specifically to phone bank and to door knock, even in this pandemic. Seed the Vote. We're donating a portion of all the tips you give us at TBR-Live on Venmo, TBR Live on Cash App. Thank you so much in advance for those generous donations. This show is a small and scrappy production full of love. And I also want to just give a shout out to the people who've donated $20 or more, which gets you a special shout out. So thank you, Robert Gilbert, Adam Ambrose, who came to see Nato and I in the Verdi Club in San Francisco. Elias Cadena, Vern Vartdal, Tushara Kodikara, Suzanne Labarge, and Vadni Mina. Thank you so much for your generosity. I'm sure Seed the Vote thanks you too. And just a funny thing I realized, if you voice to text the Bitchuation Room, you'll get the Bitch is Asian room. And in this case, the bitch is Asian. I am Asian. So, not wrong, Siri, not wrong. Make sure to rate this podcast, future people. And right now, if you're watching live, thank you for being here. Rate the podcast on iTunes. It helps people discover this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you click the like button. Make sure you subscribe. Lets people know we're here and we are live and we are discussing scenarios for a Trump coup. He is the party of projection. So they keep on saying what's happening to him is a coup. Like, you mean voting, brah? But in fact, they are, of course, preparing for their own. But without further ado, let's bring on our guest. He's a comedian, writer, labor organizer who has a regular contributor to the Bugle podcast, The Last Post, and this podcast. His second album is the Whiteness album, out now, and you can find his series Laughter Against the Machine featuring W. Kamau Bell and Janine Brito streaming on Means TV. Please welcome Mr. Nato Green.
L'chaim.
L'chaim, salud.
Salud, comrades.
What are we drinking?
Tonight we're drinking a nice little drink called Floor on the Ceiling. I recently decided I needed to get some Chinar, which is, of course, as you all know, an Italian artichoke-based liqueur.
Obviously.
So the Floor on the Ceiling is gin, sherry, sweet vermouth, and Chinar with a flamed orange peel. So it's funky.
Nothing but the best from Nato Green. We're going to have a whole recipe of cocktail books from the Bitchuation Room.
That's right.
Nato Green's Bitchuation.
You know what I always say? People say that my cocktail tastes are too posh, but nothing's too good for the proletariat.
That's right. Hell yeah, Chinar. You're like, yeah, we don't have food. We've got Chinar. We're like, yeah. No labor rights. Chinar.
Let them eat Amaro Nonino.
Oh, I can't wait. That's going to be Bezos's like tagline for his campaign. All right, let's also bring into the Bitchuation room social movement facilitator who's trained thousands of activists in the US and across the globe. He is the executive director of the Wildfire Project, a nonviolent direct action coordinator with the Ruckus Society, and has spent most of the last 20 years as an organizer and coordinator with the Ruckus Society. Did I just say that? I think I might have just said that. Oh, sorry. This has been the last 20 years. There we go. I can reading. See how it, anyway, I'll explain why my brain is broken in a little bit. As a strategist organizer in ecological and racial justice sectors, building the movement for climate justice. Currently, he's working with Choose Democracy, an organization committed to the prevention of an undemocratic power grab through nonviolent means. Please welcome Joshua Kahn Russell.
So grateful to be here. And that was a mouthful, I admit. So
no, I'm not drinking Chinar, but my brain is on broke today.
I wasn't planning on drinking, but when Nate started drinking, I'm taking the excuse to join him.
Salud. Joshua and Nato. Well, Nato, I understand you have been working on a groundbreaking, transformative, dope campaign with the nurses union in Alameda County. Tell me about that.
It wasn't just nurses. It was all of the healthcare workers who work for Alameda County, mostly in Oakland, California. There are about 3,000 of them, nurses, but also other types of healthcare workers, your nurses, aides, your social workers, physical therapists, hospital janitors and food service workers, lab techs, like really all the walks of life. And we just organized a 3,000 worker strike, a 5-day strike in Oakland of healthcare workers fighting not just for a fair union contract that protected their working conditions, but also one that made fundamental improvements to healthcare for poor people in the East Bay and challenge the long-term structural disinvestment by the government in public health systems. And it looks like we're winning. The strike is over. The campaign is not, but we've realigned the politics in the East Bay on the issue, and it was incredible. Josh helped. Like in early March, as I knew this was on the horizon, as we were about to head into shelter in place, I called Joshua in a panic. Like I just needed a sounding board of someone to think through with me how I needed to completely reinvent organizing given the limitations of the pandemic. Joshua humored me on the phone for half an hour and gave me and mostly was in the way that he does, was like, okay, Nato, sounds like you've got it under control. You could do this. And and believed in me. And you could. And I could. And so it wasn't just incredible that we organized a strike under the pandemic, in this day and age, in the darkest hour, on the darkest timeline, but also given all the limitations of the pandemic. Normally when I've organized hospital strikes, I spend weeks sitting in break rooms and being in the building, talking to people, and couldn't do it. So had to really dig deep and figure out completely new ways of organizing the strike. And it was so wildly successful. I lost weight on the strike because I got a lot of steps in. I was clocking 13,000 steps a day. Just
around your own home? Just
No. We were out lapping the hospital, running around to the different facilities. And also it was a very Oakland strike. So because this is possibly the most Oakland of Oakland things of all time, people were literally ghost riding the whip on the picket line. So that was fantastic. It was just a real incredible energy and joy that our members had to feel their power and to win.
Congratulations, everyone. Congratulations, Nato. I was like, everyone needs to thank Nato. That is so exciting. And if y'all want to hear more about sort of union organizing and labor strategy in the 21st century, Nato and I did an awesome live show with Jane McAlevey back in January. And that's, I think, episode 30 or something like that. So go find that. It was such a good night. And Nato put it into action again in this darkest time.
And if you listen to the episode, like a lot of the points that we hit with Jane about, were things that we applied in this strike: power analysis, credible plan to win, structure test, framing the hard choice, leader ID, all of those things, all of those tools that we talked about with Jane on that episode, we implemented successfully in this campaign. I will tell you, I haven't told anyone else this, but Jane has a horse. And so in the 2 weeks before the strike, I just I needed a sounding board. So I just went with her and walked her horse around the pasture and was like, here's what I'm thinking about these organized.
That's where you were clocking the steps.
Yeah. And she was like, well, but what was your structure test though? And it was like, nay,
Well, Nato, if you want more free book advice for your next book, because you started out sharing with us, you said it sounds like we're winning. And that's a good book title. That should be what you call your next book.
I'm still thinking that when the time comes that I go to write the book about my life in the labor movement, the title of the book is going to be "Can They Do That?" Mm-hmm. Which is the question you get asked most often as a union organizer.
That's like the title of the entire Trump administration. There's podcasts called "Can He Do That?"
Yeah.
Well, let's just jump right into our first segment, which of course, as always, Joshua, you've been here once before, but it is, what are you bitching about now? Jump in the comments. I see your super chats. I'm going to get to them. Thank you so, so much. What are you bitching about? Joshua, what are you bitching about right now?
Other than everything, well, most of what I'm bitching about are various aspects of both our natural and political world burning around us, especially here in California. And today, so let me first say one of the little joys in life for me this year, while we've been on lockdown and most of our movements have been on defense, and has been beekeeping. I've joined the ranks of other Oakland people building a backyard beehive, and wow. It's been throughout the last several months just really nourishing in just a lot of different kinds of ways. And so one thing I learned is that beekeepers use smoke, a little bit of this little smoking machine, to chill out the bees if you're going to open the hive, right? Because it has some effect on their nervous systems. And
what kind of smoke? What? You hotbox the hive?
Yeah, it's CBD though, so it's okay. No, it's just like
do you mean community benefits district?
There's that. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
But here in California, as many people might have heard, we had over a month of almost continuous, the skies being completely blacked out by smoke. Not only could we not go outside, but you couldn't even leave the door open for a second longer because it was toxic outside. And during that period, I started to read reports that all the smoke was making the bees act strange, and that apparently the red haze from the smoke both it messes up with their sense of smell, their ability to locate food, and as you know, bees are central to our ability to eat food. They're key pollinators, and it is messing up the bees all over California. And I started to hear stories of people with these backyard beehives of their bees either dying or invading each other. Basically, all over Oakland, there's bee wars happening. And over the last
y'all should have just stuck to sourdough, dude. Just fucking
for real.
Around with bread.
And so I've been felt very like mother, I'm like a mama bear, very protective of our bees. But over the last, 2 weeks, they started to really slow down, and I was getting concerned about them. Apparently, they got all messed up from the smoke and weren't able to feed their queen. The queen died, and our hive started to die. And over this weekend, we cracked it open because suddenly there were more bees swarming, and we're like, oh, they're back. It's all good. Uh-huh. They're not back. Who is back is all these robber bees from other hives. And there was literally this morning, the bees were flying in the air and like what's the word? They were fighting airborne, so they were like clashing into each other and tumbling to the ground. There were like yellow jackets involved, and they were somersaulting in the air, and it was really interesting to watch. But also, they were not only stealing all the honey, but like systematically breaking down the hive. And so
they're like the Proud Boys of honeybees, right there, dude. You have some
Proud bees. They have it's like their logo is like a honeycomb that kind of goes like this, that they've appropriated from working class subcultures of bees in Europe. But the
like a honeycomb with horns on it.
Yeah, and the honey was so good too. We got one harvest this year.
Oh well, that's a good thing to bitch about. I hope one day. I mean, there will be no problem once we can have like little robotic queen bees and who never die, right? Like what could go wrong?
The robot queens in general, in most contexts, I'm all for.
Yeah. Oh man, well, good luck with that, Joshua. Look, maybe, who knows? After November, maybe suddenly the queen will resuscitate. I don't know. Something will happen. I feel like the skies will open. And,
we're gonna try again, but yeah, we're gonna try again.
Nato, what are you bitching about?
Well, I'm bitching about the fact that my children are too smart. So as you know, I have 12-year-old twins.
Humble brag. My children are too smart.
They're too smart for me.
I am too good of a parent.
No. But so I have 12-year-old twins, and this is on brand. You would expect that my children would be good at what? Arguing. And so just before I came on the podcast, one of them was trying to negotiate for the right to watch more television, and we were saying no, you'd watched enough television today, and they're like, well, everything else is boring, and I was like, I don't care, and they said this idea that boredom inspires creativity is a lie that parents tell children to get them to stop watching television. And I was like, pretty good one, kid. Strong campaign here.
That is good. But you could easily twist that into like, write your own story, like the future is yet unwritten. I don't know, some crap. Like what happened to journaling and,
Right. Well, so it was like, okay, but still no on the television. And that's how they were like, okay, well, then I'm going to make a vegan donut in a cup. And so that was like,
your kid who did this?
Yeah. So that's like a great outcome, right? It's like, okay, well, like if I can't just sit there and watch Netflix, then I have no choice but to resort to baking.
Love it. Or beekeeping.
Yeah.
Or one of those things. I think that is more productive for sure. Vegan donuts in a cup.
In a cup.
Who doesn't love it? I am bitching about the fact that I'm a little bit out of it is because I have a hangover. First hangover, I think, since March or before. I'm not going to name names and I'm not going to name locations, but I did go to a wedding that didn't have very many people, maybe like 30. And I was the only one wearing a mask. Just me and my date and Matt Lieb were the only people wearing a mask the entire time. And it's like, it's got to be like I felt like the only person wearing a condom at an orgy, or like, what are we doing? Like, we should be all wearing these, right? Like this is no. Oh, okay. Oh, wow. It wasn't in a big city center, but you guys, the pandemic is still real. It's still happening. In fact, it's worsening. So I know everyone's over it, but fucking bling out your mask, man. Make it look sexy, make it fashion, but put it on your goddamn face. It was outside. We were generally safe. There was like a lot of hand sanitizer. I mean, I was trying to like just secretly spray people with hand sanitizer, but it was upsetting. It was quite disturbing.
Did you? At what point do you say something? Because that's the moment when you're at least for me, when I'm like in a situation I don't expect safety wise, I'm like, oh, am I going to say something? Am I going to leave? Am I going to roll with it?
How do you roll up to a wedding where you don't know anyone and immediately start just shaming people, and just like talking shit? Like, I would have had to be so drunk. But what the silver lining is that Matt Lieb did give a speech and sort of facetiously shamed them all on stage while he was wearing while he was wearing a mask and speaking into a mic that he had just sanitized. So he just completely shamed them, and they all laughed at themselves, like, we are gonna die. But it was a lovely wedding. Love the people who are getting married. I might have broken my no hug rule, but everything was masked. It's just scary. I'm sure we've all been in these situations, and they're so bizarre because it is this like really weird peer pressure of like, well, if you don't, I won't. Like, it is very safe sex.
Yeah, exactly.
Related, where it's like, what's the MO? Like, I don't want to be awkward and say like, should we use protection, or are you, whatever? Do you have an IUD, or do you have whatever it is? Like, I don't know, but we have to. It's like talking about safe sex right now. Socializing is talking about safe sex.
Maybe people will get better about affirmative consent as a result of this. Like maybe the starting place of that conversation just starts at like, can I be 6 feet away from you, and then we'll work our way closer.
Practice. Our society's practicing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had there's a bunch of people bitching. VG K Titan, the Orange Man, is doing one of his super spreader events in my state today. Modem handshake noises. I'm bitching about the internet. Fat Ginger Beard on Twitch. Centrist Dems is what I'm bitching about. It's always a good one. Let's see. Trying to find some more. Super chat. Oh my God, bees are flying. Call CNN. True. That was worth that super chat money. Thank you so much. All right, let's get into the week. A lot of things happened this week, but in my book, in this show, only 3 things happen. We're going to go over it in our next segment, The Week Where. This was The Week Where. The Senate Judiciary Committee held a confirmation hearing for Judge Amy Coney Barrett after watching her refuse to acknowledge climate change or what her position on reproductive rights is, and refuse to call suspending an election or intimidating voters illegal, I'm going to be honest and say, bring back the rapey drunk. Like, Brett Kavanaugh's hearing was somehow less triggering than this. I don't know how it's possible. I want it back. Let's hear more about Squee. That dude sounded chill compared to what's going on now. Speaking of triggering, this was also the week where, after the hearing was finished, Dianne Feinstein called it the, quote, best hearing she had participated in, and then not just shook the maskless, test-refusing Lindsey Graham's hand, but then leaned in for a hug. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to miss her. I won't. Like, I don't, the DNC is going to be asking for my signature on like a Get Well Diane card in a little bit, and I will not sign it. Just no. Not only did she call the hearing of a far-right ideologue that's happened less than a month before a presidential election the best hearing, she broke CDC COVID guidelines to hug Lindsey Graham. You guys, that's like breaking fast to eat shit. Like, you know who else she didn't hug? The adorable kids who came to beg her to sign on to the Green New Deal way before there was a pandemic. She didn't hug them, which means Dianne Feinstein only hugs infectious babies.
But
it's a rule.
I mean, I'm not sure that I would think of hugging Dianne Feinstein as like a good thing. Do you know what I mean? Would you really? She's not good at hugging. There's no warmth or love or.
It was a very side.
Yeah. It wasn't tenderness. They didn't relax into each other's bodies and feel the softening. Look, people are hating on Dianne Feinstein for not putting up much of a fight around the Barrett confirmation hearings, but us #resistance gas queen liberals like me know that she's really playing 11-dimensional political chess jujitsu, and the Democrats are only pretending to be craven cowards, more concerned with civility than justice, just in order to lull the Republicans to sleep so that they can immediately pack the courts on January 21. Just kidding. What was I thinking?
We can all dream.
Yeah. Feinstein's a centrist millionaire whose political career began with the murder of Harvey Milk and will similarly end in bloodshed as well during the great Antifa Proud Boy Civil War of 2021.
God. Honestly, like I think a lot of people say that Feinstein and other establishment Dems are just Republicans. I would agree, but not because of their politics. I think it's because they're so old, they forget which party they're in. They're just, just like, I am a Demican. You're like, what? I am a proud Demican. The Demican party, when's lunch? You know, like they're so decrepit. Like at what point? And honestly, that's like, I'm saying that facetiously, but when you've been in power for that long, it must feel like you're just, oh, we're part of the ruling elite. What? You know, like we're supposed to be different. All right, I'm going to move on to the second story. This was the week where Joe Biden and Donald Trump had competing town halls, and you had to pick one of them to watch, like the scene in Hook where like Rufio and Peter draw the line in the sand, except the Lost Boys do grow up and they all have dentures. Biden's town hall won the ratings game, and he was...
Were they on at the same time?
Yeah, on at the exact same time.
So you had to pick one?
Supposedly.
Yeah.
Can I just say that growing up, I had such a crush on Rufio?
So cute, right?
Yeah. Well, he was the first punk rock looking guy in the mainstream media, so I felt represented. Yeah.
You know, okay, so yes, there were dueling town halls, and it's a little bit of, there's been a lot of criticism of NBC over this, obviously, but also one of the biggest ones is, why would you run it at the same time? There's no real reason unless you're straight up trying to pick off ratings from ABC. That's neither here nor there. The Biden town hall actually did win the ratings game, and I felt like Biden was incredibly cogent. I've said he's been really bad on this show. I thought he was good this time around. He stuck the landing on several points. He repeated his stance on police reform, about how cops should shoot suspects in the leg instead of shooting to kill. And yes, that seems like a really bad answer to the question of police reform, but that answer does make sense because it's coming from a guy whose presidency would be a shot in the leg instead of a fatal shot to the heart. So
it's harm reduction.
I'm gonna take that shot in the leg. You know, I'm voting for Biden. Take that shot in the leg.
It's a great slogan. So Trump was I watched the part of the Trump debate where he was asked about QAnon. Yes. And the interviewer says, what's your position on QAnon? And he said, excuse me, what? And she said, you know, the false baseless conspiracy theory that the Democrats are involved in a satanic pedophilia ring. And he said, I don't know anything about QAnon except that they're against pedophilia, and I agree. Now, here's the thing about that. Trump lies constantly, can't stop lying. Lying is his favorite thing. And the statement about QAnon was lies start to finish, because normally you might say that being against pedophilia is not a controversial position to take as a politician. Like, what politician is not against pedophilia? Donald Trump, as it happens, who has clearly filled out his preferred customer punch card on the Jeffrey Epstein pedophilia island. So when Donald Trump says, I don't know about QAnon except that they're against pedophilia, which I agree with, what the entire sentence is lies, because obviously he does know about QAnon and he's not against pedophilia. So there's A+ lying there.
Yeah.
He also, oh yeah, you first.
No, go ahead.
No, just, I mean, I sat out of both of them, but I love, I mean, the fact that Trump got lower ratings was actually the most satisfying part of my week, because before they happened, he was bragging that he was getting free airtime. And it was clear that the only reason that he chose to do it simultaneously was to be able to brag about his ratings. Right. And so getting to see his ego taken down a peg when that was his entire, there's no other reason to do them simultaneously other than to say, like, people like me, they don't actually like Joe Biden, you know, like that's their main argument, is like, his rallies are small, mine's so much bigger, and when his isn't so much bigger, it's highly satisfying.
Absolutely. And that was probably a stipulation for NBC, like, I will do this with you this thing that you absolutely don't need to do, NBC, and I will do it, but it has to be at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was part of it. And yeah, it fucking backfired in his face. On the QAnon stuff, it's true, though, Nato, they do fight pedophilia, okay? It's the pedophilia that only exists in their minds. And that is really where the battle begins. You know, you just, if it's there, it's like, I'm fighting space aliens. You know?
Apparently, there's all of these groups that actually do work on child sex trafficking. And they're like, this QAnon thing is the worst thing that has ever happened to us because we're being inundated with false claims. And it is totally taking up all of it. Like, it's actually really, really hurting the work that we do.
Yeah, like, is anyone from QAnon like raising money for those anti-sex trafficking organizations? I don't think so.
Right.
Here's the thing about conspiracy theorists. They always avoid the conspiracy right in front of their faces. They like Epstein, right? Known child sex trafficker and pedophile. You know, conspiracy theorists, you're like, you know, well, hey, look, dark money is actually running much of Washington. And they're like, yeah, and the lizards. You're like, no, just conspiracy theorists are people who want to sound interesting, but who are too stupid to put in the work of reading. So they're like, oh, well, I have to sound interesting. So I'm just going to, you know, someone's going to tell me how to think.
You don't think QAnon is having thoughtful screenings of the movie Spotlight about the cover up by the Catholic Church of child molestation? They're just doing double features of Spotlight and the two popes, and then having lengthy debates about morality and individual responsibility in the face of pedophilia.
That is such a good sketch, dude. We need to do that. We should absolutely do. We need to pose as QAnon followers and just actually have an honest conversation about child sex trafficking and exploitation. And they'll be like, no. Where's the pizza? We're like, oh no, they'll be pizza.
Well, for what it's worth, as I identify as a lizard enthusiast, and if lizards really were running our government, I think it'd be a lot better than human beings. Honestly. It's too bad that lizards aren't actually in charge.
Lizards know when a fly like actually lands on them. You know, like lizard will swat that shit off. That'll eat it before it like stays on there for 2 minutes. You think anyway.
Yeah, I keep lizards that are actually more affectionate than most mammals. They're sweeter to me than cats.
Really?
Yeah. We could keep talking about it if you want. I'm not sure whether to keep it, but they're very cute. They're called crested geckos. Or affectionately called cresties by a community of people who are enthusiasts about them that are unfortunately called herpers, which is a really bad name for herpetologists. And it's a weird subculture. I'm involved in it. This is my first time admitting it publicly, but it's true.
This is the second public admission that I feel like, right? Like the beekeeping.
When I hang out with you guys, it just all comes out.
Can you do LARPing as a herper?
Maybe. I've never done. I don't know much about LARPing.
Yeah,
I bet you the Venn diagram is bigger than what?
You know, the guys who dress up in dinosaur costumes. I feel like they're LARPing herpers. They're like they're the big lizards.
Yeah.
All right, one final story before let's move on. Last story of the week. This was the week where, in the face of record-breaking early voting and record turnout, the Republican Party got a little nervous, and in California pulled a number of voter suppressing stunts. I'm going to read, including here in California, putting up 50 fake ballot drop boxes, which they are now refusing to take down. And the best part of this story is that if you see the ballot boxes, they actually have on them, it says tampering with this ballot box is a California felony. Like, I get that Republicans in California are all juiced on like supplements that have fake FDA, approval labels, but like this seems like a bridge too far. Like how dumb do you have to be to do that? This is like a murderer writing second-degree murder, 30 to life, no parole in his victim's blood. Like that's exactly what this is.
It sounds like that thing like. In the 80s, there was the trope. There was like a hack comedian joke of observational comedy about like the tag on mattresses that says removal of this tag is punishable by law. Yeah. And like there was like 500 comedians that did a joke about like who enforces that law. It's the same. The mattress police is the same as the fake ballot box police. What was weird about
it really is the same. That's the amount of like election security we've got in this country. Like,
well, and this is a really good preview of another way that they're trying to steal the election. So it's a good preview of the next segment. But it's also extra dumb to do it in California because it's so blatant, it's so explicit. You're doing it in a state where even if you succeed in stealing a bunch of ballots and lighting them on fire or whatever they're going to do from the ballots in those boxes, they're not going to win California. California is also the place they're most likely to get exposed with it. And so it's so clear that they're just throwing everything against the wall. And I do think the more that Trump trails in the polls, the more they realize that the only way they're going to pull this out is through various illegal or extra legal means. And they're just trying everything they can. Some of it we're going to find out about. Some of it we're not. Some of it we'll find out about 10 years from now. But this was maybe the dumbest one.
Yes. Also, like mostly Republicans are going to put their ballots in there, right? I feel like
they were in like Orange County and Ventura. They're like, it's not like they were in like Oakland and Santa Monica. It was like they're suppressing their own votes.
Right.
It's some weird kind of like natural selection of voters. I mean, at this point, I just feel like Democrats should go set up ballot boxes in Republican districts, but just like write in Sharpie on compost bins, "This is a ballot box," and Republicans will be like, "This seems legit."
Sharpies are highly convincing to Republicans, apparently.
Yeah.
As long as you write the stipulation, you know, tampering with this trash can / ballot box is a federal crime, or a felony, a California felony, whatever. We should get actual mattresses and put little slits in them to put
ballots
in, and then be like, "Do you want to cut off this tag?" I will say,
I voted already, by the way.
Hell yeah! Congratulations!
I voted today.
I voted, and
it's a Sunday, Joshua.
Yeah, I know, it's true. But I put it in the post office box because I wasn't actually sure about whether the ballot boxes were correct or not. So I just put it.
You didn't just leave it in your mailbox and turn the little like flag up. Like, when's the last time you sent a letter that way? Like, I totally
we don't have a box like that at our house, but we need a little red flag on our. I think that'd be nice.
That's what that red flag.
It would define a lot of our mail anyway.
So let's move on to our next segment, which is talking about this election, and we're so short out from it. And
I'm just really excited about Howie Hawkins.
You missed all the shade I threw on the Green Party the last couple of weeks, Nato. It's been good. It's been fun. I'm just excited for
gift that keeps on giving.
I'm excited for Roque de la Fuente Guerra, running with Kanye Omari West as his vice president. Roque, Fountain of War, running with Kanye Omari West. I don't know what that means, but Fountain of War.
I didn't know Omari was his middle name until he was on the ballot.
See? And now you're like, you know what? Yes.
Thanks for teaching me. Yeah.
A strong middle name. I want to just bring in a super chat and bring in and talk to our next guys, my fucking I got a fucking hangover, yo. Super chat, Kai Allen, who says they finally caught News Broke and want to know how I'm feeling or we're feeling and coping now that the election is almost here. Thank you for watching News Broke. Everyone, watch the last episode all about social programs in the U.S. and the history of Republicans saying that they are communist or socialist when they're not. Fuck, dude. I'm Joshua. I mean, I feel like you can weigh in on this because I, as someone who's got to prepare scripts for release days in advance that are thought out and all this, we are like half writing scripts about, so Trump has won again, or so Biden's won, so we don't know. So there are troops in the streets. And so it's hard you can't write ahead of time. We're just saving the last two pieces that we've got for the show just as a like, like whatever. I feel like we're just going to be live reporting from the streets, but yeah.
Whatever it is, it can't possibly be worse than the night that you and I spent together on election night 2016, Francesca, when when we were live on the air on AJ Plus, live streaming and trying to like make jokes as the news came in that Trump won, and no one could see that off camera we had a bunch of weeping mariachis.
No. They were not weeping. They were consoling me. I was like, "Ay, lo siento." They were like, "Oh, lo siento también."
And I had brought a flask and had already started drinking, and then a producer came over and was like, "I'm sorry, this is Al Jazeera. You can't drink."
It is true. The alcohol culture at Jazeera, very weak, very, very weak. I.e. non-existent lime. No, dude, y'all, if you don't know the story, at AJ Plus, Newsbrook thought it would be funny, i.e. me and Matt Lieb and Kate Elston thought it would be funny to hire a mariachi band for when Hillary wins or would win. And God damn it, the day Biden wins, I'm gonna run out and hire the first mariachi band. I need and we were like, well, what if Trump wins? And we're like, whatever, they'll play like a sad song. No, not even a sad, slow mariachi song. First of all, the saddest mariachi song is still like hella happy. But there's nothing you can do. I hope for not a repeat, but to answer the person's question, I'm not expecting to not be holding my breath. And like, I'm not gonna hold my breath. What am I saying? My breath will be held well through the end of the year. Like, there is no sweet release for me. Even if there is a landslide. And I know, Josh, you and with all your work, you guys have been talking about these different scenarios. So tell me about Choose Democracy, and what have you guys been plotting over there?
Well, it's been counter plotting mostly. But I honestly will give the opposite advice about holding our breath. We have to like breathe as deeply as possible, because our expectation is that this is going to be a shit show for quite a while. And the likelihood that it's a contested election in some way is almost a certainty. And so, well, first, let's just talk about why a contested election, and yes, a coup, we think is highly possible. First of all, he said it. Trump is the first president in American history that said that he wouldn't commit to leaving office in a peaceful transfer of power. That's right. What most of the news focuses on, but it is significant. It's not just a talking point. It's a big deal. He's also set up the predicate of discrediting mail-in ballots, and he's also enlisted Attorney General William Barr to do the same thing, which tells us that William Barr is under the direction of the Trump administration. And it's hard to imagine he wouldn't jump at the chance to stop ballots from being counted if he had the chance.
Sure.
And so, honestly, Trump tried to discredit the 2016 election and he won it. I mean, the idea, he's already set everything up to create conditions in which there is chaos after it's happening. And also, just to take a step back, the likelihood that we're going to have results on election night is almost zero. The likelihood that we're going to have results a month from election night is actually pretty low, right? Because it's not just the amount of time it takes to logistically count mail-in ballots for states that are not necessarily prepared for it, but also to navigate all the kinds of legal challenges that are potentially coming, because the Trump administration has been basically building legal machinery for a year anticipating this. And so we should buckle up for a complicated and bumpy ride. Mm-hmm. And in addition, I mean, just to like fully kind of lay the groundwork of our assessment, which is in terms of voter intimidation, Trump is recruiting. Not only did he say, Proud Boys stand back, stand ready or whatever, that he's recruiting poll watchers, particularly in swing states, which he's calling an army. The website is armyfortrump.com or armyfortrump.something. And so he's, of course, invoking this language of an armed confrontation. And he's also already, like every time I see in his rally them chant like 8 more years, 8 more years, the incentives that he has to stay in office at all costs, whether that's to avoid prosecution, etc., are high, right? And so also we should mention that the Republicans have control of the Senate and have control of a huge number of state houses, especially in swing states, by huge margins because of gerrymandering, for example. And so he's told us that he's going to try this. And we do believe that I said this earlier in the show, but the more he trails in the polls, the clearer it is to their side that they're going to need to use these extra legal means. And so our expectation is that because we're getting all these warning signs, it would be foolish both not to prepare for a potential coup, and also foolish for us to depend on the Democrats to handle it, because they handled it so well in 2000, which we can talk about in a minute if you want.
Well, and I think, I was just going to say, I think related to that, and you're talking about the machinery to set this entire thing up. You have Amy Coney Barrett, who's being rushed through, completely rushed through. And it's not even just Roe v. Wade, the ACA, or religious freedom BS that she'll be ruling on, but in the immediate, trying for a repeat of what happened in the year 2000, Bush v. Gore, and the stopping of counting of the ballots in Florida. And I didn't know this until this week, that Amy Coney Barrett and Justice Brett Kavanaugh were on Bush's legal team.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of their argument for trying to fast track her confirmation, is the Republicans are saying, well, if there's a disputed election, it might go to the Supreme Court, and we need another justice to break the tie. So it's their own argument that they're going to try to steal the election. And we do believe that if the 2000 election were called what it was, which was a coup, that there would have been an opportunity for us to organize. Because the thing about coups, and which I'll talk about more in a second, is that coup plotters want us to believe that we have no agency in what is actually a very fluid and chaotic situation historically in most coups. I mean, most people in the US, when they think of a coup, they think of like tanks rolling in the streets. That's not really what we're talking about at all in this situation, but it's about exploiting what is actually a pretty vague kind of set of mandates from the Constitution in order to violate democratic norms. And so just to be clear what we mean when our organization Choose Democracy, when we talk about a coup, we're not talking about a situation in which, Trump loses the election and all of the institutions in our society also believe he lost the election and he's just refusing to leave despite that. What we're talking about is either claims of victory before all the votes are counted, which we can talk about that scenario, which is likely, or attempts to stop the votes from being counted, or refusing to accept the loss, and in the process of refusing to accept the loss, actually the administration being able to organize the institutions of society to legitimize his claim to victory, which is what happened in 2000, which let's remind folks what happens there, which was there was the Republicans leveraged a 5-4 Supreme Court majority to steal an election, where there was a contest of legitimacy in Florida, and the Democrats were able to get the Florida Supreme Court to initiate a recount. And everything was stacked against them. Jeb Bush, George Bush's brother, was the governor of the state of Florida, and the Republicans got the Supreme Court to stop the recount, stop the counting of votes, right? And then the Supreme Court basically gave it to Bush, even though later, when they were fully counted, it would have gone to Gore. So we had a situation in which the person who won by the most votes, even in the Electoral College, did not get the presidency. And so that is a violation of democratic norms. And what did we learn from that? We learned that the impulse of politicians.
You can get away with it. That's what we learned.
Exactly.
You can fucking get away with it. Sorry, but also the impulse. Go keep going.
Yeah. Well, and how can they get away with it? They can get away with it when we all we relied at that time on the Democrats to say if it was legitimate or not. And they, of course, capitulated, right? And so why do we call it a coup? So we think it's important to call it a coup, not to be hyperbolic, right? Not to, conjure sort of extreme scenarios in the minds of people in the US, but to be precise, right? And we're calm with calling it a coup. And so When we call it a coup, the reason we use that word is that it's a red line that is a violation of democratic norms that most people in this country can get behind, which is different than talking about voter suppression, election tampering, stealing, which we are actually kind of inoculated against in this country. And it helps us understand the dynamics of coups, because part of what our organization is trying to organize people around is to understand this is different than typical activism, right? The dynamics of coups, if we understand this as a coup, we actually have a lot of historical and evidence-based data about what's going on, right? It helps us actually build strategy. And historically, coups succeed when people freeze, when they don't know what to do, right?
Sure.
Because it is a contest for legitimacy that is happening. And when people freeze, the institutions that go along with the coup plotters end up carrying the narrative forward. And so part of what we're doing is helping psychologically and logistically prepare people to respond in a way that's actually counter to a lot of the way that activists tend to think. So like activists tend to think in terms of like protest politics, which is where like, typically we build movements based on longstanding grievances, and you try to polarize a situation and you pick a target and you vilify them, and then you build a base and then try to leverage that base in terms of your pressure points in pressuring that target. That's a long arc. That's what we're used to doing. That's not what we need to do in this kinds of situation.
We need to be armed.
That debate is that's actually what were you gonna say?
No, I think it is really depressing that a lot of people on the left, I seriously am depressed by it. I believe in nonviolence. Obviously I believe in militancy as well, but I think it's fucked up when you have opposition being repressed to the point where otherwise nonviolent organizers would be like, well, maybe we should get arms. I mean, you've got all kinds of people who would otherwise never talk about this stuff, my mom included, are like, maybe we just get guns, and it's like, are we there yet? Is that what we want to do? One thing, there's a question, and I don't, mean to totally interrupt you, but there's a question online that I have as well. Andrew Williams on YouTube says, who's going to back Trump if he loses? Secret Service, the military. I don't see who would protect him. And I kind of agree with that because of all of the comments around, veterans being losers or fallen soldiers being losers and suckers and et cetera. And the fact that we know that, Jim Mattis was the one to speak out against Trump and reveal that information. And all these former generals who've signed numerous letters about what an ill-fit president Trump is. I don't see the military backing him, but I do see groups like BORTAC or, a Customs and Border Patrol unit who've been in Portland and in Seattle. I see them backing him. So I mean, what are you guys talking about in terms of that? This is a really awful discussion we're having, but we have to be having it.
As an organizer, I'm so exhausted that we've been pushing to actually try to get a democracy in this country, and now realizing we actually need to defend the ground that we stand on right now. And that's really what we're in. So I do want to circle back to the violence thing, but to respond to that question, the way that we imagine this happening is that the Republicans have a narrative that the election was stolen by all these fake ballots, right? And there's a moment where they're going to try to organize the various legitimizers and institutions that they have influence over to say that they are the rightful winners, right? And so the amount of institutions...
And they could easily be like, oh, look, we found 500 or 5,000 ballots for Donald Trump that got thrown out, i.e. we just made up by ourselves. Like, that's absolutely what's going to happen. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, no, they're totally going to shine the spotlight on random little inconsistencies and different kinds of ways to build that narrative. And so that's what we mean by a contest for legitimacy, where I don't think we're going to be in a situation where if Trump has lost the narrative of legitimacy, that there are going to be institutions like the military who are going to be like, we want Trump to stay in anyway. That's not really what we're talking about. What we're talking about is what is the role that regular people can play in helping this battle for legitimacy? And so that's what our project, Choose Democracy, is doing, is trying to psychologically prepare people across the political spectrum. It's a nonpartisan project where we're saying that if we move into this default protest mode where we vilify Trump, we're actually playing into an existing narrative of polarization that largely helps him, that we actually can't fall into that trap. We need to instead move into, we are protecting and defending democracy. And as someone who has personally, and I'm not speaking for Choose Democracy right now, but as someone on the left who's been entirely frustrated with the way that, for example, the Democrats constantly tack to the center instead of trying to build actually a real progressive base, for example, or the way that people try to play out what is called respectability politics, which I actually don't have a lot of respect for. In this situation, because we're in a contest for legitimacy, we are trying to, as quickly as possible, pull an uncertain center over to our side to define the terms of who gets to say that they are legitimate in being the rightful heirs to the throne, And in that context, our goal is, number one, to pull out as many sectors of society as possible. Number two, and that's what circles back to your question of violence.
So like my mom can safely take the streets, or
we need your mom involved. We do. My mom just signed the petition yesterday.
So can you make this more concrete for me, Joshua? The day after Election Day, what do we do?
So, well, let's start. I will answer that, but let me also start with what we're doing right now, because the best way to prevent a coup is to prepare for it. And so we've made a pledge that I'm sure both of you are familiar with, the Pledge of Resistance that happened in the 80s to around Reagan putting troops on the ground in Nicaragua. We were inspired by that. And the pledge has 4 parts.
Who can forget?
Who can forget? And so that the more we organize in advance, well, let me also say, coups historically, half of all coups since the 1950s have been stopped by nonviolent resistance, have been stopped by people power. Yeah. And so our strategies are built on the empirical data that we've learned from those things. And one of the first things that we've learned is, well, number one, most coups happen clandestinely, right? The coup plotters don't tweet it out in advance. So we actually have time to prepare.
Right.
Exactly. So we should take advantage of that. That's an advantage that we have, is to get ready for it.
Pinochet's tweet would have been fire.
It would have all caps lock.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in this case, what we're doing is we have a pledge for people.
Suharto was a fucking Instagram guy, though.
Yeah, super Instagram. Yeah,
the algorithm is in his favor.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do. So our pledge has 4 parts. First is that we're going to vote. We're going to participate in the process, because the best way to let me also take one other step back and say there was an interesting report by the the Transition Integrity Project, which came out in June or July. There was about 100 DC insiders, bipartisan, people we don't really like necessarily, but people who know the game and how it's played, who did all these war game scenarios and of different ways of imagining how the election is going to go down. And in just about every scenario, Trump won, except for scenarios in which one or the other party won by a landslide. So the best way to prevent a coup is to get a landslide victory, of course.
Sure. Yes.
Where the margin of victory is so big that all of the different shenanigans that they're trying don't add up to enough to overcome it. So that's plan A. But plan B,
so that it doesn't, and let me just say, so that it doesn't necessarily get decided by the courts, because even if ACB is confirmed, even you got Brett Kavanaugh, it's like, nah, man, we can't fudge these numbers to that degree.
Exactly.
So yes, a landslide would help in that. Keep going.
Yeah. So that's plan A. Plan B is, so where everyone who's signing the pledge, which we're just getting going. We so far have about 28,000 people who signed the pledge. The second part is that we're going to refuse to accept the legitimacy of anyone claiming victory before all the ballots are counted.
Yes.
The third part is that if someone tries to claim victory before all the ballots are counted, we are going to engage in nonviolent resistance. And then the fourth part is we're willing to shut down the country if necessary. And so that is...
Oh, that's all.
That's all. That's it. It's no big deal. It's
right.
no pressure.
At
I
what
will
part
say-
in all the shuffle does like, ooh, we don't know who, and then Bernie Sanders is our president? Like, what if
Wouldn't
it's
that
like
be
one of those little
nice?
cat fight in cartoons
Oh
where it's
my
like,
God.
Bernie.
That was like the fantasy if they both died of COVID and then there was nobody else. Yeah, totally.
So wow. The book. This is an uprising by Paul and Mark Engler about nonviolent resistance, where I learned a lot about some of the stuff that you're talking about, Joshua, about the history of nonviolent resistance movements, and it talks about how, like, as nonviolent resistance movements sort of execute mass noncompliance, the ability of the elite to rely on the security apparatus to coerce rule, it gets narrower and narrower. Their room to maneuver shrinks. One of the things that I took away from it is that in the scheme of things, in the scheme of like world historical tasks that you might try to take on, overthrowing the government is not that hard compared to, for example, transforming the economy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
as like
But
the
into
story
perspective.
of the left.
Yeah.
As
It
opposed
turns
to
out-
Medicare for all.
Right. Overthrowing the government is not that hard. The scenario that I am most worried about, quite frankly, is that Trump will just win. Like that Trump will, like, if Trump loses and then refuses to accept the result, I feel like that the story that you're telling sort of makes sense to me about how that can unfold successfully. The thing that keeps me up at night is that, like, Trump will appear to have won because of all the voter suppression and tampering and meddling that Republicans have already done, and there's not even a way to contest that after the election. And the Democrats will just be like, well, the Florida decided to not recognize the results of the ballot measure to re-enfranchise all the felons, so Florida lost. That was
dude, that's my thing, is like I would love to add just non-concession from the Democrats. Like, can the Democrats just not concede for like 3 weeks? Right. Maybe not even at all. Look, I was in Georgia the night that Stacey Abrams lost, in quotes, because that election was completely messed up, thanks in part to a lot of voter suppression. And she gave the most incredible speech that was not a concession speech. And this is the thing, whether it's Gore in the year 2000, whether it's, Obama and Hillary in a less than 24 hours calling Donald Trump in the year 2016 to congratulate him. It's like, look, I look at a more recent example in Mexico, right? When AMLO, who is now president, Manuel Lopez Obrador, is now president, doing some fucked up things, doing some good things, sort of a center-left president. But when he supposedly lost to Peña Nieto, he and his supporters sat in the Zocalo. They created a whole tent city and were like, fuck that, we're not going to concede. Now, that tent city lasted for a very long time and eventually, like, petered out. But just the display of resistance is like, we need that level. We need a leader who's going to say, like, look, even if Trump does win, you still need to do that shit, because this is an undemocratic presidency.
Well, and that's why we don't want to leave it up to Joe Biden to fight on behalf of democracy. The Democrats just don't have a track record of doing that, right? And so and I think that's where we can learn from other coups, whether it's like Thailand in 1992 or Argentina in 1987 or Germany in 1920. All of these different ways, like part of our orientation is like
my favorite one, by the way, I think wasn't it Alberto Fujimori in Peru in 2000, where they tried to steal the election by like coating people's ballots in honey on every line except the line that said Fujimori, so that your pen wouldn't mark anything but Fujimori. And then
I don't know anything about that.
I won.
Yeah.
Like,
I
it doesn't,
using
it's like invisible
honey
ink.
as a tactic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of
well,
bees,
that's where you catch more flies with honey. I don't know the expression, but the and to what you were saying, Nato, is that if Trump actually wins as the result of voter disenfranchisement, it's a disaster. But part of what we're also talking about is, I mean, some of the likely scenarios that we are thinking about are that so we know that mail-in ballots are going to trend towards Democratic. And so it's highly likely that on election night, the results are going to skew towards Trump more than as the mail-in ballots start to be counted. And so number one is if he tries to declare victory before counting all the ballots and then tries to make the claim that those ballots are somehow invalid. That's one scenario. Another scenario is where all these Republican controlled state legislatures they say, yeah, our state may have voted for Biden, but we think most of those votes are invalid. Ooh. And so therefore, we're going to send in a different slate of electors. And that's actually not unprecedented. In 1876, this is actually a huge part of our history. That's in 1876, there was extreme polarization in the nation. Multiple states proffered different competing slates of electors that governors and state legislatures said we have different results. And as a result, there was a huge contest of legitimacy again. And the only way it was resolved was right before the inauguration. It was basically a grand bargain that was the end of Reconstruction that ushered in Jim Crow.
Yes.
So we know that the impulse of
democracy works.
It totally works, right? And so that's part of what we're trying to avoid is the impulse of political leaders is to cut deals. And what we've learned from other coups and other places is that, the thing they want us to believe is that we don't have agency. Actually, at every step of the process, if we engage in non-compliance, which is different than protest, right? Which is that we're going to refuse to carry out the orders of the coup plotters, whether that's government bureaucrats or whether that's labor going on strike or whether that is people engaging in protest to pressure politicians to sign the pledge, which is one of the many different kinds of action opportunities that we have that we're talking about. There's different ways to create a shift in the balance of forces at every step of the way. So even though the Constitution is unclear about a bunch of these potential contested election scenarios, at each moment, the more that we get engaged, the more it can tip the balance in our favor. And so that's partly why we're organizing people now, that we're not waiting. And there's actually a lot of other groups doing the same thing, including in swing states. So, for example, the Rochester AFL-CIO just declared that they will, instigate a strike for themselves and call for a general strike if Trump tries to declare victory with all the ballots not.
Hey, Rochester, hell yeah.
Hey, Rochester. And so there's a number of different in Florida, the Dream Defenders and Sunrise are organizing a youth strike and organizing different ways to actually go to the ballots and do things like de-escalation if they encounter people like the Proud Boys, etc. And we in Choose Democracy, which you can sign our pledge at choosedemocracy.us, it's not just about some abstract pledge. It's that once people sign the pledge, they learn about, we have 8 more trainings coming so far planned. We're doing multiple trainings per week. Nice. And thousands of people are coming to every single training. So we're training thousands and thousands of people in everything from de-escalation to ways to protect the results, and also strategies to understand that what we're talking about is identifying what are the different pillars, what are the different social blocks. Oops, I just hit my microphone. I'm getting so excited. Social blocks in society that need to consent to a power grab. And how can we pressure them to withdraw their consent to a power grab? And the thing that we've learned, to arc back to what you said earlier, Francesca, about like violence or nonviolence, there's an active debate on the left about in normal protest considerations about the role of whatever, violence, property destruction, confronting fascists. To us, that's not, that's an interesting debate. It's not relevant to a anti-coup situation.
Sure.
In an anti-coup situation where you're in a contest for legitimacy, number one, you need to pull out, what we're not doing is some kind of self-righteous moral pulling out of like a insular left subculture to protest. What we're talking about is mass participation, right? And the best way to invite your mom, Francesca, is to have it be nonviolent, right? So
yeah. And if there's
strategically,
watermelon, she's totally there too.
nonviolence and watermelons is one of the ways that we pull people. It's also, if you're in a contest for legitimacy, and one of the characteristics of fascism is that there's an administration that has a relationship to a paramilitary street movement, which in this case is a bunch of the various, not just Proud Boys, but other, what do you call those? Militias, you know, who are being recruited for Trump's army, right? The more that they engage in violence, we're in a contest to draw as far as a distinction as possible between us and them.
And that's sort of, I mean, as justified and angry as we all might be, and some of our militancy may be justified, absolutely. I definitely agree with you, and I think that the more massive and the more inclusive any kind of outpouring of protest can be, the more likely we are to win, right? The more likely we are to make things so difficult for even the go along to get along or get along to go along Dems that they have to recognize that this was illegitimate. I hope we don't get to that moment. I hope Trump really does just want to leave the country, as he sort of suggested at a recent rally. Also, oh my God, he's still doing rallies. But thank you so much, everyone, y'all. The pledge is in the comments, and definitely sign up for one of those trainings. I know I'm going to be. I'd love to be there and find out, what I'm going to do. I'm also just making a local phone tree for people in my neighborhood, for people I know, folks I can get in touch with if we have to take the streets. We got to watch each other's pets, whatever it is. I think that's a really good thing for all of us to do. I'm going to dress Ramona up in a little cape and whatever when we go marching. But thank you, Joshua. And I want to move on to our last segment, because there is an election that was not contested in this world. And there is an election that brought about so much better than a Joe Biden, and of course better than a Donald Trump. And that is the election in New Zealand. And that was the election of Jacinda Ardern, who is Labor's leader and was elected to another term. She is the AOC of Micronesia. That's not Micronesia, wherever that is. And she's done incredible things. Handled COVID pandemic like a boss, handled the Christchurch massacre with the utmost empathy and love, hugging some of the family members and family members of the victims, saying they are us, saying that immigrants chose New Zealand because of its compassion and because of its openness. 2018, banning single-use plastics throughout the country, and also saying that sanitary products would be free for all young girls in schools. There's nothing she can't do. She's super Jacinda, and I want to know, what will she do next? We got to bring it back up after the coup talk. So let's focus on someone who's lovely and wonderful and nothing but sunshine and rainbows for democracy, Jacinda Ardern. And so I want to know, what is she going to do next? What's the second term going to be about? Nato, any thoughts?
Yeah, so apparently I saw this online that in addition to all of her groovy second term policy proposals, she, after winning election, fucking DJ'd a party. So, what is Jacinda going to do next? She's going to bring back like 90s raves on the beach, where you can't get there unless you page a guy and then go to a payphone and give another guy a cigarette and then drive 8 hours into the desert.
Dude, I've
all
tried
that
to
stuff.
do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that as a woman alone with your other friend. That's really scary. I've abandoned. But anyway,
it doesn't matter how many overalls and Doc Martens you have on.
Yeah, not safe. But yes, she'll make them safe. It'll be
safe.
She'll make raves safe again. God.
You know what's so exciting? So the climate movement, I mean, in both, Polynesia, Micronesia, Melanesia is so strong. And I've had the gift of getting to work with New Zealand climate activists, most of whom are Samoan, and they are so energized by this kind of series of social democratic electoral victories that they're pushing harder and harder, which is a great lesson for us to learn, which is like each time you win, make bigger demands. And
Yes.
that's completely their orientation.
Dude.
I'll also say that almost every leader that I've connected with, mostly indigenous leaders from New Zealand, are also named Jacinta, spelled differently, spelled with a C, but there's 3 that I can think of. So I'm not sure what the...
I think Jacinda is like a new, like, just like that's the term when something's so radical and badass. What? Like Jacinda. Wow, that's Jacinda. Yo, Jacinda, dude, Jacinda. A lot of comments. Love net zero carbon, probably. Jacinda will be the next James Bond, says Todd Roy on YouTube. I want to just say on the mandate thing. So the Labor Party has like just 48% of the vote, and they could easily form a government. I don't know how parliamentary systems work, but I think it's like Lincoln Logs. They like form a government, and whatever. The point is she could easily form one.
It's like the Wonder Twins, where you just be like, form of the government, and then you fist bump, and then you take the
exactly, and it happens.
Yeah.
But she said something really key. She said, "Look, of course I'm going to work with other parties. I want to build consensus, but we have a mandate." And just that phrasing, when you win, it's like, I want the Democrats, if and when they win, to be able to say the same thing, man. Like, look, because what they do, we all know, is like, well, I'm a president for everybody. Like, no. I will build consensus, but I've got a mandate. Like, there's a program mandate. There's a policy mandate. That's why I won. That's why I'm here. I'm not here to be tacked to the center. I'm not here to be tacked to the other side. What the fuck is that? Anyway, she's the best. I think the Democrats sort of fetishize compromise all the time, and like they want compromise for the sake of compromise. And what Jacinda's articulating is that compromise is a function of power, and that if you have enough power that you don't need to compromise, then fucking don't compromise. Yeah,
write that down, kids.
Write it down, and I think Jacinda will accept hundreds of thousands of American refugees and hug each and every one of us as we enter in through the border.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
I think she might invade America to install a democracy.
I do appreciate the firewall that they've built of American oligarchs trying to build their little like climate apocalypse underground bunkers there.
In where?
There in New Zealand, there's all of these different. Basically, there's this huge attempt at capital of basically buying all of this land, and trying to find
people like Peter Thiel and stuff.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that it's one of the most safe places on planet Earth for at least the next 30 years of climate change.
Right.
And so because of that, that's their escape hatch plan. And they're like, we're gonna put a stop to this.
Boo, we're gonna fill that with bees, man. That's our beekeeping future. That's where Joshua is gonna build his new beekeeping area.
Yeah.
So fuck that. Joshua Kahn Russell, thank you so much for being here. You guys follow him on social media, follow Choose Democracy, sign up for those trainings. I'm sure they're going to be good. We are in this together. Let's remember that. We will be behind the barricades, you, me, and AOC. Let's make it happen. Let's make it fucking happen. Joshua, any last plug?
Well, first, I just want to say I'm grateful to be on the show. You two are the funniest people I know, and it's so fun to talk about this with you. And that ChooseDemocracy.org, our trainings are super evidence-based, and the facilitators are veterans from, for example, one of our lead trainers was one of the coordinators of Mississippi Freedom Summer in 1964, where they faced Klan violence, they faced police violence, and so they're highly grounded in experience in what to do in the potential scenarios that we're planning for. So please do plug in. There's a lot of options. We have a lot of power in the coming time, and so don't give it away.
Amen. Thank you so much, Joshua. You take good care. Nato Green, what you got to plug, boy?
The usual. Yeah, follow me on the social medias. Nato Green on Twitter, Mr. Nato Green on Instagram. If you want to see mostly a bunch of like strike photos.
Hell yeah, Nato, thank you so much, and we will have you back. We're gonna be talking about this shit. This is not ending. It's not ending. The nightmare will not end. Take good care, buddy. Love you. And love all of you out there. And just as a reminder, we have a tip jar. It's a cute little tip jar. It's very sparkly in your mind and fancy. And there's like stickers and stuff. And it's TBR-live at Venmo, TBR live on Cash App. We're donating a portion to make sure we get that landslide to happen so we don't have to take the streets as much. And there isn't as much of a contested election. We're donating a portion to seed the vote, doing all that awesome grassroots organizing. Make those calls, y'all. Send those postcards, but mostly make the calls. Do the text banking. Love y'all so much. We are voting. We're voting for the 11 million undocumented people who cannot vote. We're voting for the legacy of folks like John Lewis and the civil rights movement, fighting for the right of everyone to vote. And we're also voting because the other alternative is this.
One thing with me, the nice part. I went through it. Now they say I'm immune. I feel so powerful. I'll walk into that audience. I'll walk in there. I'll kiss everyone in that audience. I'll kiss the guys and the beautiful women and everybody. I'll just give you a big fat kiss.
He almost said children. You know, he almost said children. And that would have been good. He thought about it. He wants to kiss children. He's the pedophile. All right, guys. Don't just bitch about it. Be about it. Bye.